Welcome to another Whiskey, Games, and Nerd Stuff. Today's whiskey is Blanton's Whiskey. And today's Nerd Stuff is actually going to be a conversation. And that's going to be a conversation about the, quote, Trump tariffs, or tariffs. But let's go ahead and take a sip first. I just love Blanton's. Now, before I start off this conversation, I want to make it very clear. I'm not an economist. I'm not a financial advisor, nor is anything that I'm discussing or talking about is intended to be in any way investment advice or financial advice. I'm just someone who likes whiskey, games, and nerd stuff, and this video came about from a conversation while I was playing board games and sipping whiskey with some friends. And during that conversation, I thought, this would actually be a good topic for a video. And I was actually in the process of doing another video. I was going to try and figure out what whiskey to best pair with this particular game. But as I started to do it, I actually had somebody ask me, hey, what is a tariff exactly? And then I'm going to just stay with the basics. There's a lot more to this conversation. There are much smarter people than me that can give you all the nuances and discuss what this is all about. This is basically the best that I could recall from the conversation the other day and what I had just said to a friend. So let's go ahead and start, and then hopefully, this will make sense as we go along. So the first question that's going to come about is, hey, what is a tariff? And basically, a tariff is a tax that's levied or imposed from one government on goods coming from another government. And what you're not seeing is my hands moving back and forth because that's what I talk about. That's kind of how I talk. So the next question is going to be, hey, why do countries impose tariffs? Well, there's a variety of reasons, but the most common is going to be they want to exert influence, they want to raise revenues, or they want to protect a competitive advantage on a particular product. And then another question that's going to come up is, hey, how are they basing tariffs? Well, typically a tariff is going to be by unit or a tonnage, or it's going to be by the proportional value of a product. So when you hear talks and conversations in the media about, hey, the tariffs for this are going to be 20%, this is going to be 30%, it's not saying the price of the good that you're paying, that particular price, is going to go up the same proportional value of that tariff. There's a lot of nuances, and there's a lot to this. If you're basing the tariff based on the proportional value, that's the value of when it comes into the country. It's not the value of the product that it's getting sold for. So there's a lot to this, or like a car. Let's say, if the tariff is $1,000 per unit for a car or a product, then it gets passed along in a variety of ways. So with that said, the next thing that's worth talking about and discussing is who can be impacted by tariffs, or what stages in a process from point A to Z could be impacted by tariffs. Well, your importers are going to be impacted. Your suppliers and manufacturers, and I'm going to use suppliers, manufacturers, companies interchangeably just as I'm talking about this, just again, because this is just how I'm explaining it. So you have importers, suppliers, companies, consumers, the countries that you're raising the tariffs against, and your own country can be impacted as well if you get into a situation where one country is doing a tit for tat where we're going to raise tariffs on your goods, they in turn are going to raise tariffs on the opposing goods. So what happens when tariffs are raised, right? So let's say tariffs go up by 20% on particular products. What happens is a domestic importer basically has a couple options. And I always say it's 3 options on how they can absorb that cost. And again, I want to make it clear, I'm not an expert on this topic. I'm not going to be able to go into everything. There's going to be some nuances that I'm going to miss. And if this is something that you want to know more about, I would highly encourage you to do some research for reputable sources and learn more about this. This is just stuff that I was discussing in a conversation that I thought would make an interesting video. So as I see it, importers basically have three options. They can absorb the cost out of pocket. So if a tariff goes up, right, and an importer has to take that cost of that, then they can either absorb that cost, meaning they're just going to take less of a profit. So another option is that importer could shift production of that specific good from country A to country B that has more favorable agreements. So if the tariff on a specific product is 20%, if it's coming from country A, but you can get that same product from country B for less, that's another option. The third option is they can pass along that cost to the suppliers or the purchasers of said product. Well, then those suppliers have a couple of options of how they would need to deal with this. And let's go ahead and take a sip. So how the suppliers would have to deal with this is, how is it going to impact the supply chain distribution? Is it going to increase costs for them? Is it going to reduce the profits? When these suppliers are working with manufacturers, how is that going to work out? Then in turn, when that product, and again, remember I'm using some of these terminologies interchangeably. When these companies, retailers purchase, right, these products, if that cost was passed along to them, then they in turn have to decide how they are going to absorb that. Are they going to take that same product and sell it for the same price, even though they had to ultimately pay more and take less of a profit? Are they going to raise the prices, right? Or are they going to get that same product from somewhere else that may not have the same quality to it? So then we get into consumers. So it's going through these various stages from the beginning to the consumers, and then a consumer needs to decide, okay, I can buy this good that I was purchasing and it's going to cost me more. I can buy that same good at the same cost, knowing that indirectly somehow that's affecting, whether it's affecting that company's profits, maybe it's the quality of product. There's somewhere there, it's not just going to be a net zero. There was some impact along the way. Or they just don't purchase the product. And again, I've left out a lot of things. There's a lot more to this. There's a lot more nuances, and there's a lot to this. One of the people that I was talking with raised what I thought was a very interesting question. And that question was this: if tariffs are raised by, say, 10, 20%, do we believe that those pulling the strings are going to absorb the cost? Do we believe that they're going to take less products? Will manufacturers move production, or will everyone along the process raise prices, thus the consumer paying more? I've heard some say that this will create a short-term burden on the consumer, meaning that we're going to pay more money for some goods, but in the long term, it will increase jobs. So is the short-term gain or the short-term burden worth the long-term value? And these are questions for people that are much smarter than me. However, if this posting generates enough feedback, discussions, interest, I'll do a couple more videos on this particular topic. I would love to hear feedback about what people think, the pros and cons of tariffs. I would especially like to hear from anybody who is more knowledgeable on this topic than I am. If you've watched other videos, I will randomly talk about things like this. Generally, my videos are talking about games or comic books or books that I like. And I just realized as I was doing this, one way to think about this is as follows. Tariffs can impact importers, suppliers, companies, manufacturing, consumers in different countries, and depending on how things work, they can all cluster together. And it's very interesting to see how this will work out and how this will play out. And I just kind of thought that was interesting as I was looking at this. I would also love to hear, because I've been having a hard time deciding this, what whiskey would you pair with this game? For those that aren't familiar with this game, this is Cluster. It's basically a game where you place down magnets, and you're just trying to get rid of your magnets without them clustering together. Sometimes it just kind of works out. It's kind of like I can see the similarities into this particular topic. Again, I do appreciate everybody taking the time to watch this video. Please like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And until next time, everybody, cheers.